Well, welcome to everyone who is here. I'm going to go ahead and screen, and we'll get started with this session, which is establishing an online presence, digital footprint, or digital tattoo. I'd like to welcome you to the 2015 School Leadership Summit. The summit is sponsored in part by the TCAL project, which is one of California's SETS projects, and it targets leadership and education technology. The great thing about this project is the fact that despite being based in California, the work that's done actually is applicable not only around the United States, but throughout the world. So they do really good work, and it's great to have them be a sponsor. And this slide shows also a number of other organizations that are based all around the United States that have lent their support to today's event as well. And I'd like to take just a moment to say thank you to all of them for making this possible. So what I'll be talking about with you over the next 20 minutes or so is establishing an online presence. Is it a digital footprint or a digital tattoo? And I'd like to take just a moment to introduce myself. My name is Susan Brooks Young, and I spent 23 years in both public and private education. I was a classroom teacher, grades pre-K through 8. I was a site level administrator, an assistant principal, and a principal at those same grade levels. And I also was a K-12 technology integration specialist for a county office of education in the state of California. The last several years, I have been a cadre member on the TCAL project that's based in California, and also have worked as a consultant both in the United States and abroad, addressing various aspects of use of technology in classrooms. And I'm coming to you today from Lopez Island, which is one of the San Juan Islands in Washington State, and am just really thrilled that I have an opportunity to be with you and share some information with you today. Before we actually get into the meat of the presentation, I want to be sure to mention to you that there are online resources that you may access not only today during the session, but also on an ongoing basis after the session. And I also encourage you to share the resources that are linked there with your colleagues. There are things there that are appropriate for use with students. And please do go ahead and feel free to share these links. Use the URL that has been posted on the events page, but also that is posted currently in the chat window. When you get to the page you're seeing on my screen now, go ahead and click on the title of this session, and it will take you to a page that looks like this. And again, everything that I mentioned today is linked here, so you will be able to find it readily. So in this short session this morning, I'm going to be addressing 3 topics with you. The first thing that I'll be talking about is the difference between a digital footprint and a digital tattoo. I'm then going to spend some time sharing some strategies that you can use to define your own online presence, and in turn, these are strategies that you can share with colleagues and students. And then finally, I'll spend a little bit of time reviewing the resources on the webpage that I showed you so that you know exactly what they are and what you might find there to help you out. currently in the presenter mode, I cannot see the chat window. However, if you have a question, please go ahead and add it to chat. Amy is monitoring that window for me, and I've asked her to go ahead and interrupt. So if there's something that you would like, either a comment that you'd like to be sure gets shared with me, or if there are resources that you would like to be sure you fully understand, then please go ahead, post your question. Amy will interrupt, and I will take care of that right on the spot. So let's go ahead and start off by looking at the difference between a digital footprint and a digital tattoo. It's probably obvious to you that social media sites like Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, Vine, or Snapchat are all places where a person's online persona is established. But what about consumer sites like Amazon or Netflix? Have you ever logged into one of these to find recommendations for what to purchase or to view? And if so, have you ever wondered how those were generated for you? Well, actually, they're based on previous purchases that you've made or rentals that you've viewed, rankings that you've given, reviews that you've written, that sort of thing. You have provided the information that is then used by that site to extrapolate what you might want next. And you can actually modify the recommendations that are given to you by changing the ratings that you give to whatever, or by excluding a purchase. This probably seems fairly benign to you, and likely it is. But it's an example of how consumers expand their own online presence by providing information, and often they don't even realize that that's what they've done. So what actually is a digital footprint? Wikipedia defines it as the data that are left behind by users on digital services. There are two main classifications for digital footprints: passive and active. A passive digital footprint is created when data are collected without the owner knowing, whereas active digital footprints are created when personal data are released deliberately by a user for the purpose of sharing information about oneself by means of websites or social media. So an example of passive collection would be your browsing history, where the sites that you visit are recorded and accessible later on. Active collection requires that you provide information. So for example, it could be when you set up an online account for something. Online privacy has been a concern since at least 1999. The problem with the term footprint is that it may imply that it's easy to delete or modify existing online information when in reality, it's not. Saying that your online presence is like a digital tattoo is probably a more apt simile. Why? Well, because it's difficult, if not impossible, to eradicate information that you have posted online. If you doubt what I've just said, go to Facebook and see if you can figure out an easy, quick way to get rid of all your previous posts. You'll find that it's not as easy to do as you might think. And another factor that now comes into play is the fact that others can contribute to your digital tattoo with or without your permission, simply by tagging you in a post or on a photo. So does that mean that a digital tattoo is inherently a bad thing? Not necessarily. Digital tattoos can be crafted to put your very best foot forward online. And in some cases, people actually expect to be able to learn more about you online. And if they try to find you and they can't, that actually has a very negative impact as well. So the important thing is for individuals to take control of what's out there and not let it be determined by other people, or even worse, simply by happenstance. So now what we're going to do is move into some of the strategies that you can use to ensure that you are putting your best foot forward online by taking control of your digital tattoo. Do you know what information is available about you online? What you need to do to find out is go ahead and conduct a personal background check for yourself. I'm going to pop out of this for just a second and go to Google. The way that you start is start with a Google search and type your name in and put it in quotes. If you have a middle initial, that's often very helpful. But go ahead and see what pops up about you. You can see my website comes up first, my activity on Twitter, things from my publisher, from LinkedIn, my Live Binders bookshelf. I've actually got, results for Susan Brooks Young in quotes, and I can go through and I can look at that and I can see whether or not I'm happy with what's there. Another way to do the Google search is to use different names that you may have lived under at various times. So I will not only search for Susan Brooks Young, but I'll also look for Susan J. Young. I'll look for Susan J. Brooks. And I include the quotes, especially on those two, because those are more common names. I also sometimes toss in where I'm currently living, because sometimes the location will help eliminate extraneous results. I'm going to show you another site, and again, remember, this is linked. This is all linked to the online agenda, so you can find it very quickly. And again, I'll go ahead and put in my name. I'll tell you a little bit about this site. I'm not going to put in the location this time. People is a search engine for names. You punch in somebody's name or their username into a search engine, and optionally you can include the location. Then People will offer all the information it can find on the person whose name you put in. The thing about People is it doesn't do any vetting of the information that is in its database. So you will see things about people that have names that are similar to yours in your search. Even with my unusual last name, many links come up for other people who clearly are not me. I'm not Susan Ann Brooks from Colorado, Virginia, and 3 more states, for example. And of the 3 links that are up here at the top that actually at one point in time do or did relate to me, the second and third one are both dead. So the only one that's left is the top one, which actually leads to some more information about me. But a lot of that is incorrect too. For example, one of them says that I've been a realtor. Another one says that once I was a talent scout. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. But that kind of misinformation is pretty benign. I will go ahead and do what I can to get that cleaned up, but overall, none of this is a career breaker for me, so I'm not terribly worried. But you do want to check and see what's there about you. Another site that you want to check out is called Specify. And what Specify does is, again, you type in your name or the name of whoever it is you're looking for, and it brings up images that are currently posted on the web that are related to that person. Now, for me, Specify is really mundane because, as you can see, the only thing that's popping up for me are pictures of covers of books that I've written. So I am not at all concerned at this point in time anyway about what's showing up with me here. The final site that I'm going to take you to that you can use for your own personal background check is called Intellius.com, and I'm really not happy with this site. I have contacted them. Actually, now that you see, I'll do the search really quickly, and then I'm gonna get rid of this really quickly because it shows information that I would prefer not to be sharing. So I'm gonna go back to a slide that I have fixed up that covers that information up. Intellius is sharing information about people I'm related to and some other things. I don't feel like it's my place to have those names connected to me. So I have actually twice now filled out a request to be removed from this site. And as you saw with the live search I just connected, I'm still there. So I am going to continue to pursue this because it's just information that does not need to be readily accessible to other folks, and I will just keep at it. But it is not as easy as they make it sound to actually get yourself removed from their database. So start with the personal background check and follow up when you find things that you would prefer not to have on display. The next thing then that you do, once you know what's out there about you already, is go ahead and start taking control of your online presence. Even if you don't plan to use them, experts are now recommending that you set up accounts with at least minimal information on the following sites: About Me, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And the reason that they recommend that you do that is to prevent anybody else from setting up a dummy account for you. Unfortunately, many educators have in the past had the experience where someone, and it can be a variety of different people, someone goes ahead and sets up a dummy account because they're upset with the principal, or they're upset with the teacher, or they're even upset with the school. They've set up dummy accounts for schools. So administrators, you want to be sure to go ahead and grab those names for your schools as well. But go ahead and do that so that no one else is able to do it for you. You might even want to consider purchasing a domain name that is yourname.com so that nobody else can buy that for you. You don't have to use it, but it just keeps other people from using it for you. And this way, with these accounts with the minimal information, you at least know what parents or students or colleagues or prospective employers might be finding out about you when they search for you online, and just assume that at some point in time, yes, they will actually do that. It's also important that you monitor the privacy settings on your account. Make sure that you go into each account, that you make them as private as you can or as you want to. There have been multiple examples of people who did not bother to do that, posted something thinking that it was only going to their small circle of friends, and then finding out that in fact it had actually been blasted out to the world with some dire consequences. So you just want to be sure. And I'm not trying to be scary or use language of fear at all, because I'm actually a big advocate of social media, but I do just want you to be practical, and I want you to be aware, and I want you to know that there are steps that you can take so that you don't make a mistake. You also need to think before you post. I don't know what it is about people and the internet, but it almost seems to be now in our DNA that we react to something, we type a snarky whatever, and hit post before we stop and think. And that's really not a good thing to do. And one thing, even if you're not trying to be snarky, one thing to keep in mind is humor does not play well in online environments for the most part. A lot of times people think they're being funny, but because the reader doesn't have facial cues and can't hear your tone of voice, what was meant to be a joke actually ends up coming across as being really pretty awful. Recently, a young woman named Justine Sacco lost her job as Senior Director of Corporate Communications at IAC because she tweeted what she thought was a joke, but what readers interpreted as being a racist remark. Not only did she lose her job, but she ended up being hounded by thousands of Twitter users who took it upon themselves to call her to task for having posted this tweet. And another recent event, the new chief technology officer for Jeb Bush resigned within days of the time that he had been appointed because back in 2009, he posted some stupid derogatory remarks on Twitter and somebody found them. So it's really important that you think before you put anything up there. It's also important to think about who you friend, because people who you friend can contribute to your digital tattoo by tagging you in posts or in photos. And they may put things up that you find completely inappropriate, particularly in a professional setting. So if you have a wacky second cousin who you know can't be trusted to not post things that are inappropriate, think twice before you actually friend them. And then do remember that if somebody does inadvertently post something that you would prefer not be connected to you, that you can ask them to remove it. And if they won't do that, at the very least, you can remove the tags so that it will be harder for somebody to find you if in fact they're looking and you've been tagged in something that makes you uncomfortable. So then what are some resources that you can use for yourself or with your students that will help get this message across? There are a number that you are going to be able to access through the online resources that I've posted for you. And I'm right now just going to do a quick run through of what these are so that you might have a thought about where to begin when you go back later. The first resource that I've linked for you is from Educational Technology and Mobile Learning, and it's 4 videos that are great to use with students about digital online presence. Most of them are still referring to it as a digital footprint, but again, you can talk with the kids about that. The first video that is on this page is one from Common Sense Media, and it's a general overview for students about what a digital footprint is and how it occurs. I really like this and actually all the rest of the videos on this page because they're not coming from a position of fear. They're coming from a position of taking responsibility for your online presence. And I think that's a much better way to approach this with students. The second video that's linked to this comes from the University of British Columbia, and it's really interesting because what they do is interview students and ask them, what do you think somebody would find if they actually went out and did a search on you? And it's very interesting to hear the students' reaction and for them to talk about what it is they think really is out there. And several of them say, you know, now that I think about it, there's probably way more out there than I had really intended to have available about me. So it's a great discussion starter for your students. The third video actually doesn't refer to digital footprints. It talks about digital dossiers, and it explains how in this day and age of online medical records and parents sharing ultrasound images of kids, that most people have a digital tattoo that started even before birth. So it again talks about then how that progresses and how adults in children's lives actually have already built a digital tattoo for their children without even thinking about it. And the kids then have to take responsibility for taking that over and making sure that what's portrayed is what they want. And then the final video on this page talks about how digital tattoos create first impressions and how it is that you want to be sure that your first impression online is a positive one. The next two links, again, are to videos. The first one comes from TED, and it's a short TED talk. Juan Enriquez talking about digital tattoos and this whole concept of what that's about. And this may be appropriate for older students, definitely something for teachers and other educators to watch. And then the second video that's shown here is an interesting one. It's actually European, from Belgium, and it shows how a fortune teller is able to, or a person masquerading as a fortune teller is able to tell people all kinds of things about themselves simply by getting their name. And once they've got their names, in one of those tents off to the side, there's a group of people with computers, and they are just looking up every bit of information they can find about this person who's sitting in front of the fortune teller. And they are feeding that information to the person posing as the fortune teller. And it's really a very interesting way to make that point with students and with adults for that matter. This particular slide features the UBC Digital Tattoo page. It is just chock full of resources for adults and for middle and high school students. It's a joint effort of the campuses in Victoria and Vancouver, and I cannot over recommend this resource to you all. Do plan to go spend some time there and see what our friends to the north are doing related to digital tattoo. And then finally, because I think that it is really important to start talking with youngsters, elementary age students, about digital tattoo. These are a couple of resources that target younger children. The first one, Follow the Digital Trail, is a K2 activity that helps children start to understand how they have an online presence. And then the second one comes from Australia and is a teacher of very young children who is also talking about ways in which she deals with her students and their digital tattoo. So at this point, that is what I have to share, and we have just a couple of minutes where perhaps there might be time for a question or comments, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Amy let us know if anybody has posted a question or any comments that they'd like to share.
Sure, thanks, Susan. And Viva, just to answer your question, I've posted the link to the live binder on the event page. So if you go back to the link that you used to join the session, you should be able to grab that link there. And we'll be sure to post that on the website as well. Peggy just left a comment that definitely echoes what you've been talking about. Those kinds of humorous tweets are often shared in the context of a Twitter chat, and without the context, they're not appropriate. So it's really important to think about what we post in Twitter chats to know that it says what we mean, even outside of that context.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is not a place to practice your stand-up comedy routine.
Yeah, and that's such an appropriate comment considering our next event is going to be a Twitter chat. And I have to say I am always intrigued by the comments I do see on Twitter that I know are part of a Twitter chat, but do seem quite off color. If you're not participating in that Twitter chat, they may seem quite out of character for people.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. It's a new world.
It sure is. It sure is. And thank you so much, Susan. This has been great.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate y'all having me today, and I hope that folks will take advantage of the information here and share the archive with their colleagues as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Susan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.